Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you around the world. Thank you for joining us today for this event on women's leadership for climate neutral and circular industries. My name is Stefan Sickers and I'm the Managing Director of the Directorate of Environment and Energy at UNIDO. I would like to begin by acknowledging the government of Finland for being the co-organizer of the event and express our thanks for their continued financial, but also operational and political support of UNIDO's work on gender equality and empowerment of women. We also want to recognize Costa Rica's support, whose Minister of the Status of Women, Her Excellency Marcela Guerrero, will be delivering the closing remarks. In line with the theme of the 65th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, women's full and effective participation and decision-making in public life, as well as the elimination of violence for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls, we are happy to provide today a platform to celebrate women pioneers in the field of climate neutral and circular industries. At UNIDO, we believe it is high time women's leadership and entrepreneurship are recognized and amplified in the fields of climate technologies, the clean energy transition, and green industries. We want you to know their names. For this purpose today, we present to you 4 special guests that we are having. The first one I'm mentioning is Chitra Rajan, a serial entrepreneur and an advisor of PFAN. The second one, Maluisa Flores, sustainability manager at Esmeralda Corporation. The third is Susanne Biegel, the catalyst at large and co-founder of Gender Smart Investing. And last but definitely not least, Vere Shaba, the founder and CEO of Green Design. At UNIDO, we are conscious that climate change and environmental degradation have differentiated effects on women and men. As such, it is vital that mitigation and adaptation efforts are gender responsive in assisting the implementation of multilateral environmental agreements, fostering cleaner and circular production throughout industries, as well as promoting and transferring environmentally sound technology. We are committed to reflecting women's and men's needs, experiences, and aspirations throughout our technical cooperation activities. As one of UNIDO's flagship programs, the Economic Empowerment of Women in Green Industry project, funded by Germany, aims to support the target countries of Cambodia, South Africa, Senegal, and Peru in adopting gender-responsive green industrial policies and promoting women's leadership in the sector. The project has just completed a comprehensive policy review and needs assessment of women entrepreneurs in these countries. The findings will advise policymakers and practitioners on the establishment and implementation of a framework that integrates gender in green industrial policies. A link to the study report we'll share later on in the chat. Let me also quickly point out that UNIDO also oversaw a study carried out by university students on women's empowerment in the clean tech sector, focusing on UNIDO's global clean tech innovation program. The study revealed the enormous potential for advancing gender equality and inclusive growth through clean tech, but also noted many barriers, especially financial and societal ones, that limit the reach of aspiring women entrepreneurs in this field. We are excited to hear today from our entrepreneurs on what can be done to overcome these challenges and to promote women's leadership towards a greener future. But before this, I'm delighted to give the floor to His Excellency Vils Skenari, Minister for Development, Cooperation and Foreign Trade of Finland, who will deliver a video message to set the scene and officially open our event today. Please, Nicholas, if you would be so kind to start the message.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone, wherever you are. First, I would like to thank UNIDO for this opportunity to address this important event on behalf of the government of Finland. I hope you have managed to celebrate women's leadership and empowerment and gender equality despite the many restrictions we have in the current COVID world. Today's topic, women's leadership in climate neutral and circular economies, is highly interesting for Finland. Our top priority in development policy and cooperation is the rights of women and girls. In addition, 2 of the 4 cross-cutting objectives to be implemented in all our cooperation are gender equality and non-discrimination. Both the priority area of women and girls' rights and the cross-cutting objectives are deeply rooted in human rights-based approach to development. Finland has put a lot of resources and given encouragement to UNIDO to keep on and even intensify its good work on gender equality and the empowerment of women. It's a fundamental success factor that the Director General of UNIDO, Mr. Lee Yong, is recognized international gender champion. I'm particularly happy that UNIDO and Finland decided to arrange this side event at the Commission on the Status of Women. It's the flagship UN event on gender equality and the empowerment of women. Finland has traditionally participated in the Commission with a high-level delegation. This year, Finland's delegation is headed by Minister for Nordic Cooperation and Equality, Mr. Thomas Blomqvist. Mr. Moderator, Finland really appreciates the important work that UNIDO has done and does in fighting climate change and advancing circular economy. Climate change is the biggest challenge of the humankind. It has not disappeared anywhere, although we have tend to put all our attention to the COVID-19 pandemic that is raging around the world. Finland set the target of becoming a carbon neutral country by 2035. From there onwards, Finland aims to be carbon negative. It is a hugely ambitious goal. It's our intended contribution to the global efforts to keep the temperature increase maximum at 1.5 degrees Celsius. The European Union has pledged to become carbon neutral by 2050. More than 110 countries have actually given the same pledge. Circular economy is one solution to the climate crisis. We have to reduce our waste footprint for the benefit of climate and the environment, but also because waste and overconsumption of resources don't make economic sense. Today's hot slogan must be reuse, remanufacture, or at least recycle. It makes sense, especially economically and environmentally. I really encourage UNIDO to work with developing countries on their national circular economy action plans. Finland was the first country in the world to prepare such a plan. That was actually back in 2016. I can assure you that Finland has implemented the action plan rigorously. It's monitored constantly and was updated in 2019. I am convinced that the world needs a transformative leap to circular economy. UNIDO is a key player in that process. Ladies and gentlemen, Finland's development policy helps fight climate change and advances climate resilience and low emission development. A sizable chunk of our development finance benefits the climate work together with the international partners. Relatively large amounts have been allocated in the form of investments and loans specifically. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for having me here today. I wish you all a very successful event. Stay safe as well. Thank you.
I would like to thank His Excellency for his remarks and for highlighting the importance of women's leadership in climate neutral and circular industries. Personally, I should say I would also like to thank him for the warm remarks regarding UNIDO, but this is not the purpose of today. Now, without much further ado, let us hear from entrepreneurs and celebrate their stories. I will now ask each of the 4 entrepreneurs to present themselves, their company, products, and how they are contributing to a greener future. We are excited to hear about your story. To kick us off, I'm happy to give the floor to Chitra. Chitra, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. It's indeed a pleasure to share this platform with all of you. My name is Chitra Rajan. I'm from Bangalore. I wear 2 different hats, actually. One, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and second, I also work as a coach for an organization called Private Financing Advisory Network, or PFAN, which is supported by both UNIDO and REAP, where we coach entrepreneurs in clean energy and energy efficiency business and get them investor ready and help them to get funding. As an entrepreneur, currently I'm working in the area of renewable energy. I convert organic waste into bio-CNG. The technology which I use is very simple. We use anaerobic digestion to process organic waste to produce methane, which is purified and bottled and sold as bio-CNG, which can be used anywhere, right from running the automobiles to used as a fuel in the kitchen. Apart from methane, there are 2 more byproducts which are coming out of my plant. One is carbon dioxide, and another is a organic slurry. This carbon dioxide, usually in most of the bio-CNG plants, they just let it off because they don't know what to do with it. But we purify this carbon dioxide, upgrade it into food grade level. And I'm proud to say that we run the world's first commercial bio-CO2 plant, which produces CO2 from waste. The other product, which I said slurry, is sold as organic manure. So there is absolutely, when I say no waste, absolutely no wastage in my plant. So currently I have 2 plants, and one I process about 50 tons of organic waste, and another one I process about 500 tons of organic waste. Before becoming an entrepreneur, I was working in the IT field, dabbling in the current cutting edge technologies. Then the entrepreneurial bug bit me. As an entrepreneur, I focus on 3 different diverse industries. One is construction. I construct residential apartments. I have a coffee plantation, and I'm there in the renewable energy field too. There are 2 reasons why I chose these 3 totally unconnected industries where I do not have any prior experience at all. One is that I have a short attention span. I get bored. I like a lot of excitement. So I like to start from scratch where I don't know anything and I have to learn and then make a place for myself. So that's very exciting for me. And that's probably the reason I got into the IT industry also, because I come from a family where my father was a banker and everybody in the family followed his footsteps and joined the bank. And they felt that I too should join there because this is the safest job for women. It's a 9-to-5 job. You don't have any stress. You have fixed timings, you have insurance, you even get pension when you retire. But I rebelled and I said, I don't know where I want to work, but I know I don't want to work in the bank, and I want to work in an industry where I have my breakfast in one country, my lunch in another country, and dinner in a third country. So I joined the IT industry. The second reason why I selected a very different industry is I was sick and tired of people telling me that this industry is good for women, that job is good for women. You should not do this and you should not do that. I strongly felt that whether I do something or don't do something, or whether I have a chances of becoming successful in any industry, depends on my innate capability. It has got nothing to do with my gender. For example, some people can speak in multiple languages and some others can't. So some people are very good in singing and others cannot hum even to save their lives. That has got nothing to do with gender. So I just wanted to prove a point that if a woman wants, she can do anything as long as she is ready to learn and willing to put hard work. So here I am today as a successful woman entrepreneur in 3 different industries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chitra. These were fascinating insights, actually. And it's great also, and I would like to thank you that you're advising entrepreneurs as part of the UNIDO co-led P-Fund initiative to ensure their aspirations become a reality like yours did. Now, let us hear from Vera. Vera, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And thank you, Chitra. I'm already so excited to hear everyone else's stories. And honestly, I'm really grateful to be here. So thank you so much to UNIDO for having sent out the invitation. And also, I want to take a moment to really thank the Embassy of Finland. In 2019, I was actually selected as the Circular Economy Campaign Ambassador by the Embassy of Finland in South Africa. And my job was to, or not really job, it was a role, so volunteer role, was really to encourage the youth in South Africa to understand what the circular economy was. And what was quite interesting is going into the different universities, there was a lot of learnings that I got out of that. And I think that what really does separate people, I don't think is talent, I think it's opportunities. And I think that that is definitely something across the board in terms of youth and also in terms of women. So thank you for that. In terms of kind of how I'll just chat about my story, I'll speak a bit about my story, and then I'll speak about our collective story. So every person in this room is interested, has an interest in seeing how women can be more involved in the circular industries as well as in the green industry. So it's our collective story. And so really kind of looking at the status of where we're at, and then just kind of 5 things that I have had to learn, sometimes in a bit of a hard way, as a woman in business and as a woman in green. So to give a bit of context, I am Veri Shaba, and I'm the founder and the CEO of Green Design in Africa, as well as Green Design Capital, which we've just founded. And I am a mechanical engineer. And my reason why I ended up going into engineering is a bit weird. So I always wanted to be a lawyer. Like, I wanted to fight for women. I wanted to fight for justice. I come from a country where people were denied rights for years under the apartheid regime. And that was just something in my heart where I was like, that's not okay. And we need to continue to fight that, because although institutional discrimination has been removed from our country, sometimes you still find systemic injustice and systemic discrimination. And so I wanted to be a human rights lawyer. But then in my final year of high school, I remember seeing this map of the world at night. And the first thing I thought was, why is Africa so dark? And that really broke my heart, because that means, first of all, it's a sign of the economic development of our continent, but also it means that there are children across our continent who, as soon as the sun sets, it is completely dark. They cannot read, they cannot play with their friends, they cannot, log onto their laptop, because that's probably a sign that there's no electrification. And so I decided that I wanted to be an engineer to specifically fight the energy trilemma, which looks at energy equity, energy security, and energy sustainability. And so I went from wanting to be a lawyer to wanting to be an engineer. I had no idea what engineering was about. I have no engineers in my family. I'm the first generation engineer. And I think when I started engineering, I was just like, I have no idea what's going on. And I think it's something that I'll speak into a bit more, but especially in Africa, when you look at it culturally, girls are told to play in the kitchen and to play with dolls in their teacups, while the boys are told to hang out with the father while he fixes the car. And learn all of these mechanical things. So I remember learning what a clutch was for the first time when I was 18 in my first year of studies as a mechanical engineer. And that's the kind of thing that we really like a lot of the girls really struggled with. So when I started my engineering degree, there was so many girls. By the time we graduated, I think there were about 10 out of 100 girls within mechanical engineer who actually graduated. And most of them had not graduated in minimum time. And I think that that's really, as again, what I spoke about earlier in terms of the systemic kind of gender roles that sometimes exist within different fields. From there, I was a student. In my final year, I did practical training for a multinational engineering consulting firm where I worked on the Wangari Maathai International Design Competition. Wangari Maathai is the first African Nobel Peace Prize laureate for environment. And when I worked for that competition, that's the first time I actually got exposed to green buildings. Now, at that time, I was 22. So that was about 10 years ago. And I got exposed to green buildings for the first time only then. And the whole idea of green buildings is just to say that buildings contribute 40% to greenhouse gas emissions, and that can be avoidable. It's not like other industries where it's like mining or really high energy intensive industries where you can't run an entire manufacturing plant off solar, for instance. And so it was really the idea of how do we change the way that we build our cities so that they can be energy efficient, water efficient, and low waste generating. So that was the whole idea of green buildings. And then from there, we won the competition because it was a carbon neutral institute. And a few years later, I then founded Green Design. And what we specifically do is we look at green buildings and green cities on the African continent, knowing that Africa has got a high urbanization rate and also knowing that Africa has got the youngest population. So we need to ensure that we have enough natural resources for people in the built environment. The biggest thing that I would say in terms of our collective story is that women are the most vulnerable when it comes to climate change. This means that in whatever sphere of influence we're in, whether people are working in buildings or in manufacturing or in finance or even art, women are the most impacted. And so every decision that we make has to be able to address climate change in some way or another. And I think what's really sad for me as well is that, African women who tend to be the world's poor are also the most impacted. And yet we're not really pulled into the space of climate and industries and green as much as I wish we were, knowing that the largest demographic in terms of the male and female population, there are more women on our continent, and yet we're not economically included. And so I think that when we look at the green economy and why I love this space, even though I'm only working a small portion of it, which is green buildings, I love this space because the green economy is not a separate economy running, in parallel with the existing economy. The green economy, in my opinion, is a strategy. It's a strategy on how we can really get environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and economic sustainability. And I think that what has always been so bad is that the green economy has always been seen as a separate thing. So it's like, so you work in, accounting or economics, and then you work in the green economy. I think all accountants, all economists, all artists, all, musicians, whatever, all engineers should know and understand the green economy. And then I think moving forward and adding to that, I think that all women should be exposed to it as soon as they can. I don't think women should be kind of delegated to a particular gender role. And so kind of looking at this, session that we have and just the Commission on Status of Women, I think for me, I kind of have 5 things that I picked up, and that I hope that we really just discuss it and go into a bit more detail about it. But I think the first thing that I've noticed in terms of the woman not being as included is really the gender roles that exist, specifically in some of the continents. I mean, for literally, I would walk in meetings as the founder of my business that has been running for 5 years, where we've been, am I about to get stopped?
I wouldn't stop you, because you really do a great job in bringing out very important points. But if you could squeeze the other 4 points a little bit, that would be
in a minute.
2
minutes. Okay, awesome. So sorry, like, as you can tell, this is one of those topics that I'm so passionate about. But what I just wanted to say is that the gender roles are really there. I'd walk in a boardroom and people would ask who the founder of my business is, or who the engineer in my business is, because people are still, we don't see enough of ourselves within the space. So I think it's really trying to address that. The second one is the competing priorities for women. We have a lot that we do need to juggle, and sometimes it does get overlooked. And so that's something that I had to learn as well. The third one is that I feel that there's a lack of mentorship and experiential training in the male-dominated field. A lot of the times, we wouldn't be able to find mentors or people who'd be able to say, these are some of the lessons that we have learned. So really quick examples is that for my business, we struggled in the first 2 years, and eventually we found a mentor. And from there, we grew from 75,000 Rand in revenue to 1.5 million in revenue. And that's a huge jump. And that's because we got good mentorship. The fourth is a lack of finance. There isn't enough gender lens finance. There also isn't enough microfinancing and seed financing. You either have to go for a huge ticket of $500,000 or something like that. But most women businesses really just need a little bit of money to get to the next step. And the last one is just access to markets. So that's something that we really struggled with in terms of being a woman-owned business in the green sector. And so that's really my story and our collective story, and just some of the things that I really hope that we'll kind of brainstorm and work through in this session. Thank you, Stefan, for the additional minutes.
No, actually, thank you so much for this really great expose of critical issues that you're facing. And you are an important example for many other women who are facing the same sort of difficulties. It's good that you brought them out. I should also say I could relate in my different position to some of the other things. I'm also an engineer, I should say. And we are also in the building that we are hosted here. I mean, not these days in COVID, but principally it's from the 70s, but we're trying our very best to make it greener. Not so easy, but we are now starting to actually use the excess heat from our air conditioning systems to provide heating to different households here close by. And independently, I'm sure we would benefit from your experience to actually do substantially more, not only at our premises. Now, thank you so much, Vera. And let us hear from Malusa. Maluisa, you have the floor.
Okay, it's now. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation, UNIDO. I work in Esmeralda Corp. I have been working here 25 years in this company. It serves the food sector, and I'm witness of this growth. I'm started with environmental issues, solving problems. I was in charge of them, and that we achieved was incredible for us. We now reuse 100% of the water that we use. And we are a small example that working, caring for the environment is possible. Next, please. Esmeralda is located in an ecological protection zone, so we must be very respectful of our ecosystem. We have a challenge. Our challenge is to continue our operations without altering our environment, and with a conviction that it's possible to work with clean technologies in an area of ecological protection. It's a wetland called Swamp of Villa. Is a migratory birds observatory. It's near Lima, is the capital of Peru. Next, please. This is a flow chart, the plant that we do, because this is our solution. We build a wastewater treatment plant with a technology of MBR and RO, able to retrieve the resource we take, the water, and the water use with a positive impact on the ecosystem in which we operate. Next, please. In this plant, we can, you can see this aerobic treatment tank and one of the ultrafiltration batteries. We have another treatment, chemical treatment, and a lot of compost after the treatment of in these batteries. Next, please. You look how the clean wastewater look, very clean. Next, please. The MBR installation, new and in the treatment. Next, please. And all the water pass through the membranes, go back, and through reverse osmosis to be used in the cooling system. Next, please. We obtain water. The category of this water is used for animal drinking or short steam vegetable irrigation. Next, please. This water is used for the irrigation of the internal and external green areas, no? And also to wash the floors in the plant. Next, please. The plants grow very well. It's a good water. Next, please. This is our roadmap. We work seeking to be a sustainable company. We know that we cannot achieve it alone, so we have to work with everyone involved. It is not an easy task. It's very hard, but we know that that education is very important more in the childhood. Next, please. Since 10 years ago, we have been recognized as a country brand. We are one of the first in this category. You must have heard about the Peruvian brand, very famous because it is discard Peruvian food in the world, and have another categories that the green categories. Next, please. Our share value programs allow us to generate and maintain green areas in our community and further remote areas. Thanks to SURPAR, the city park of service of the city part of service. Next, please. We are very proud of our share value program because listen to our experience, other companies began to do the same. It's very successful for us that the companies look Esmeralda and do the same. Next, please. Pantanos de Villa is not a swamp, it's a wetland. One of the few remaining in the city of Lima. Every 2 years, as part of the Corporate Social Responsibility Program, we take the school children on a visit. It's very exciting for the child. They're a poor zone and they're not have possible to go to the wetland. Next, please. We were awarded twice, one for being the best wastewater treatment plant in the industry for using technology not previously used for it in Latin America, and the second for our Share Value program. Next, please. This is our team. Today it is 4 men and 4 women, and I am the manager. This is a very good persons, a very good professionals. They are very young, and I'm proud of them. Next, please. The products we process have our green seal and are in the main supermarkets in this country. Here represent an eco-friendly process, good management of resources, and is join our brand and the brand of our clients. Next, please.
Maluisa, we have slowly to come to a close. Just that you manage the remainder of your time carefully.
Yes.
That would be nice.
Okay. Our social commitment, our effort to confront our challenge and continuously improve our water use solution helped us cement our enthusiasm for sustainable operation and proactively promote our ideals with the community, making Esmeralda Corp a green and sustainable innovative company. Next, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maluisa. I think it's a telling dichotomy that gender roles around the world dictate that women take care of waste management at home, but at the corporate level, it's essentially a male-dominated field. Thank you so much for your drive and your vision. You're really a trailblazer and another great example here in this panel on efforts towards circular economy. Now, thanks so much. And I would like to come to Suzanne and would like all of us to hear more from her about gender smart investing. Suzanne, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I'm going to give you a little bit about who I am, what my origin story is, how I'm investing, but also the work that I'm doing globally with Gender Smart. And I'm the co-founder of Gender Smart Investing Summit. I'm the founder of an organization called Catalyst at Large, and my mission is to unlock unprecedented amounts of capital at scale with a gender lens. My backstory is that I started as an entrepreneur. I was an ed tech entrepreneur and a technology entrepreneur all through the 80s and 90s. I built and sold a business which grew to several hundred people with an amazing woman co-founder in the e-learning space, and then we sold it to a multinational. I was always an environmentalist in my private life, but our business was about e-learning, which saves a tremendous amount of travel, but it wasn't fundamentally about environment. But when I found myself with capital, I said, the 3 things I care most about in the world are about women and girls, equality, about climate and environment, and about social equity. So I started moving my own portfolio and saying that to my wealth advisors, my managers, I want things that really address all 3 of these things. And in 2003, I was looked at as if I had 2 heads, quite honestly. And people said, these things are not connected. These things are separate things that you're talking about. And you should invest as much as you can for the most commercial returns in things that are in each individual slice, and then do philanthropy on the other side. And I said, that's not really what it's about for me. I believe you can bring these things together. So you're gonna see a few examples of my own portfolio, but it's illustrative of the kinds of things that I really believe we really need to be thinking about at a broader level. So I was thinking about even early on, circular economy, sustainability. We weren't calling it that. We were just saying reduce, reuse, recycle. So one of the companies I'm invested in is called Our Cup. We replace plastic cups at stadiums and arenas and concerts with reusable cups. And in the COVID context, we had to pivot. So we now have started something else, which is called Our Wear, which is about reusable packaging. I think probably people are quite aware that food packaging in the time of COVID has gone off the charts. Plastic packaging for single-use food delivery. Water Equity is a fund that is getting water and sanitation by lending to banks that on-lend, especially to women, to put in place access to water and sanitation loans. And we know that the issues around water are directly connected around to climate, and especially such a strong gender lens in the disproportionate lack of access to clean water and sanitation that women and girls have. This is a women-led, women co-founded, strong women's leadership story in their fund. Root Capital is an organization that's been around for more than 10 years, lending again to agriculture initiatives, and especially looking at the gender lens. There's a project called Women in Agriculture, which looks at not only women entrepreneurs, but where are women in middle management? Where are women in the agronomists, the scientists, the controllers, the accountants who influence businesses so much? And how do we get them equal access to inputs, training, financial resources, other resources, so that they can be the change makers that they are? And so this is in Latin America and Africa, in Southeast Asia. Calvert Impact Capital, which is an extraordinary organization that's moved $2 billion of capital since it started, running more than $500 million in assets, that is doing renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, creating good green jobs in low-income communities, and thinking about agriculture in Nicaragua, forest resilience bonds in Southeast Asia, natural capital, as well as access to things like smart, low carbon cooking. And thinking about also how do we democratize access to everyone being able to be an investor. So for as little as $20, somebody can invest in what are called community investment notes to be able to be a climate and gender investor. And Calvert has been one of the leaders in bringing that forward. Aquaspark, which is a woman co-founded, co-led, gender-balanced team and investment committee. Where are the women entrepreneurs in sustainable seafood? Where are the women in supply chain? So even when we're investing in male-led businesses, where is the job creation? And where are women in decision-making, in fund management, is something that I think a lot about, because we've got to be driving the capital decisions in these kind of sustainable solutions. I'm in another fund, which is called AIM Partners, which, speaking about seafood, has invested in a company called Shark Meats in Asia, and so based out of Singapore. It's a woman-led scientist founder, but an entire woman team growing shrimp from cells, and thinking about, again, this combination of where are we thinking about more sustainable solutions in the blue economy, and thinking about not only who's the leader of the company, but what does that team look like? What does their supply chain look like? How are they thinking about employment? In addition to, by the way, who is the consumer of a company like that? And this is an amazing woman-led fund with a gender-balanced team. So these are just a few examples of the kinds of things that you can get behind. I'm going to switch gears and talk about my role in the summit that I co-produced and co-founded. This is a summit that brought together $15 trillion of capital across 500 people and institutions from 53 countries to talk about how do we unlock gender smart capital at scale? And how do we think about, in this year's summit, crises as catalysts? We've got a gender and climate working group. The crises we're thinking about are the three crises around climate, around racial equity and social equity, and around COVID, obviously. And this working group brings together development finance institutions, banks, investment banks, foundations, family offices, pension funds, development agencies, the whole constellation of players who are involved, and a number of UN agencies, to say, what can we invest in? How can we invest in? What does good look like when you bring a climate agenda together with a finance agenda? And how do we think about reframing risk, helping people to understand the risk of not paying attention to gender? What is the opportunity set when we see entrepreneurs like the three that we just heard from? Where can we drive long-term value by paying attention to where women are in the picture? And how do we have more women driving the investment decisions, as well as being consumers of the products that we're talking about? So the areas of opportunity, if you think about $1 trillion has moved in climate bonds in the last number of years. 20 billion has moved in gender finance directly. So 1 trillion versus 20 billion. There's $23 trillion needed to address the Paris Agreement. What if all of that had a gender lens? This is what we're thinking about. And we're thinking about how do we make sure we're having the most social impact for women, the most positive climate impact, and the most intelligent financial approach, so that investors can come into this along with development agencies and philanthropists to really unlock the solutions that we need. And whether you're starting with a green project and then applying a gender lens, or whether you're starting with a gender focused, a women-led business, or where we see women in the picture as entrepreneurs and innovators, how do we make sure they have access to climate smart solutions? So we're talking about, where is climate and gender in infrastructure, in energy, in agriculture, in sustainable economy, in circular economy, in sustainable cities? And we're trying to really help people see that you can be looking at, where are women as leaders, owners, entrepreneurs, innovators, but also the scientists, the workers, the consumers, again. So our point is really, yeah.
Could you wrap up slowly? That would be great. I'm really sorry to.
That's okay. So our goal is really to connect and convene the people that can really make this happen, to really help people see very specifically in an infrastructure project, where is the job creation and where is the supply chain? In a direct investment, where again is women's leadership and the opportunity to really think about women's markets? How do we catalyze commitments that are powerful, direct, specific, both financial commitments, but also process commitments, to get people to think about not only what they're investing in, but how they're investing to realize the opportunities that we see? And the players that are doing this range from the FCDO and USAID, DFAT, Global Affairs Canada, all the way through to all the development finance institutions, big foundations like Shell Foundation, and big banks like UBS and Bank of America, Morgan Stanley. So this is about using our power as policymakers, as entrepreneurs, as investors, as development actors, as market builders, to shift where financial flows are going, to shift people really understanding how we shift policy, how we shift market linkages, how we shift supply chains, and to really understand how we can work together to catalyze these solutions, to make these changes happen, and to catalyze capital towards change, both in a climate and gender smart way. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. That was actually very good lead over to the second round of questions that we're having, because you presented so much about one of the critical areas, or several, but focus a lot on the financial, on the ability to finance actually entrepreneurship. And after hearing from all four of you now what you are doing and giving us really speaking examples which speak to us, we are looking to maybe drill a little bit deeper with all of you for this round of discussion. And I would like to maybe start with Chitra, and I would like to come back to what Suzanne just said. Now, as an entrepreneur, Chitra, you have there are a number of key conditions or mechanisms to ensure the financial sustainability of your business. So what are they actually, and what would be the role of governments or financial institutions, or also organizations such as UNIDO, in supporting women to grow their business towards a greener future. What could these stakeholders do? And now, floor is yours, and we get a really great additional viewpoint from comparing to you, Suzanne, top-down provider. Now, Chitra comes to us as the taker. Here we go, Chitra.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. See, as my other panelists said, the bottom line is we need funds. Access to funds is the key ingredient which is needed for business to take off and remain sustainable. And access to funds on a timely basis and then at a reasonable rate. So that is, and that's where the international organizations play a very important role, and they are playing. Like, for example, I said I work with an organization called PFAN. In PFAN, we take our commitment to helping women in clean energy business very, very seriously. We have a number of women coaches so who help women who have some kind of hesitation in talking to men. But so the way we have specific women coaches there, we are also actively looking for women-led projects. We have had a number of calls for proposals, especially for women. And we are also trying to partner with funds that are specifically meant for promoting women. Having said that, I would like to point out to something very, very basic. If you see the reports of all the organization, I'm not targeting anybody or finding fault with anybody. I'm just giving up these names because these are the first ones coming to my mind, like UNIDO, World Bank, IRENA, and many more organizations. Yeah? And today, women and climate change has become a buzzword. So whenever they say women, and they tend to look at women as one homogeneous mass or class of people as a target group. We need to understand who they are targeting and who is the target market. For that, we need to first segregate this whole homogeneous mass, which they are looking at it, into two sections. One is women who are the end users or the consumers. And in most cases, if they are coming from developing countries, they could be the victims of climate change. The second section is the women who provide products and services and which address the climate change issues. The poster group for these international agencies are women who don't have access to electricity, they don't have clean energy, water, they don't have sanitation, health, education, whatnot. So all the products and services which these organizations are focusing are products like solar powered lamps, solar phone chargers, smoke-free cooking stoves, and products like that. As a result, only these kind of projects find supporters and funding because they are newsworthy and they make a very good story. Just imagine somebody saying 10,000 women in Kenya got solar lamps and so now they're able to work in the night, which they were not able to do before. Or 3,000 women in Nepal are using smoke-free stoves for cooking. This makes a very appealing story compared to that saying that a 5 megawatt solar power plant has been set up by a woman somewhere else, or a 15-ton bio-CNG plant has been set up somewhere by a woman. It's easier to support such small-scale adaptation projects also because the fund requirements are very small. It's, in some cases, it's as small as, say, $50,000. And the impact they make is much more visible. I'm not saying that the challenges faced by these women are trivial in any way. They need all the support which they are getting. But there is another section of women at the other end of the spectrum who are setting up bigger plants like wind farms or a big waste to energy plant or a solar farm. These projects require big upfront investment and they have long gestation periods. And investors want quick returns fast, and they see these projects as high-risk projects. So they don't find us, people like us attractive. And these international organizations, on the other hand, want to see big visible social impact, which they don't see in our projects. And in between these two, projects like ours are slipping. We get caught into the gap which nobody is trying to address. We are fighting a very lonely battle. And when we struggle or when we falter, we are repeatedly questioned about our ability to handle technologies. They doubt about our understanding of the market, our understanding of our customer base. So most of the international organizations are putting both segment of these women together in the same basket and view them with the same gender lens. That is not working, and it will not work. Our needs are very different. Just 30 seconds. We need to access bigger funds. Some of us need access to newer markets. Some may be needing help in some technical support. These international organizations have to put in place the mechanism to identify such entrepreneurs and provide them relevant support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chitra. That was actually an excellent excursus into how also on the, let's call it the high end of investment, gender bias plays an important role. Because, you know, in the middle of your intervention, I was wondering if you would come to the disadvantage of gender biases in this part of the industry, and you did. You advised very clearly how in a competitive situation for even large funds where you would think rational, very well, how should I say, institutionalized investment decisions are being made, which you would expect to be non-gender specific, they start to be gender specific. And I think that's a very important aspect that you brought in here. Now, I would like to turn again to a different topic, and I would like to ask Maluisa maybe to take the floor next. I mean, I understand that you have actually, not only for yourself, but for a number of other companies, with your success, you have managed to unlock access to credit for further clean tech initiatives, and that you have increased your revenues actually. But what I'm wondering, I'm wondering about your communication. How have your partners and clients reacted to Esmeralda Corp's adoption of ecological and circular practices? Is that an obvious direction to go to? And another question would be whether you are collaborating with educational institutions maybe or others to support the next generation, especially women students, to become circular industry professionals. Because honestly, here at UNIDO, I'm hugely biased, not towards UNIDO, also towards UNIDO, but in particular towards circular economy. This is a really big topic here. And I think we have the opportunity to make great strides, but we will completely fail if the next generation doesn't come in. Could you tell us from your perspective what you did in this direction? Maluisa.
Thanks. The first question, yes, the response has very positive, both partners and clients, because they have been able to see that all the economic invest time and effort to make an environmental issues have not only made the company comply with the current legislation, but also go further, be respectful with the environment, and is an intangible that we have made visible through our seal. No, and the customers can differentiate our products as eco-friendly, and it's possible to learn more about the circular economy actions. And the second question, yes, we are helping a lot. Our beginnings, we have an open door policy for anyone who wants to know or learn about how to treat effluent and reuse water in the plant. No, we also have several agreements with educational institutions, university, technical institute. Students come to do their undergraduate and postgraduate thesis, internships. With the pass of the time, we have seen that the number of women that study the career are greater. No? Our environmental team, I said, have 50% women and 50% men in appropriate profiles. We thought, and we have a great team of biologists, sanitary engineers, environmental engineers, and environmental technicians, and we have an equal proportion. Yes.
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, thank you very much, Maluisa. I think that's encouraging to hear that things are moving forward, and also that the share of women in this is increasing. Now, I would like to turn to you, Suzanne, and we have a question from the audience. And the question is very straightforward. Why do you think that men, often in power, don't acknowledge the business case for gender smart investing? And what are you doing to enlighten them? Please.
Fantastic. Okay. So, first of all, this is the work of men and women, obviously, to change the system. And there are many men who have been in power, who it's very easy not to change. There's conscious, there's unconscious bias, as you just mentioned, Stefan. People are not used, they're used to investing in, they're used to collaborating with the people who look like themselves. And so if women have not had a seat at the table as investment managers, as investment actors, as entrepreneurs, and we're trying to really shift, people will just look around and see all the people they're comfortable with. The thing that we've also heard is that we are very often, this is quite a generalization, quite story driven. We're story driven, we're very collaborative, we're very much about here's what that opportunity looks like. And the guys will often say, I want the facts, I want the business case, I want to know, just cut to the chase. And so I don't know that we've done as good a job at bringing the facts and the figures to the table. And so one of the things that we need to do to really make that case is to say, look, we are talking about a massive market opportunity, a tremendous value creation, a tremendous edge to understanding risk by not paying attention to gender. We've got to make sure that people understand the risks for what are you missing out on, and not seeing talent, not seeing innovation, not seeing the leadership that is here, and really frame it in a way that is in business terms. And then we need to change who has a seat at the table with those men so that we have gender balanced decision making and different kinds of conversations. So yes, it's absolutely imperative that we recognize that this is the work of men and women, and that we've got to get very, very fluid in saying, these are the facts, this is the business case, this is what this opportunity looks like, this is the risk to you by not doing it. And by the way, I can tell you, I was just with the head of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, $1.2 billion foundation, a guy who absolutely gets this and says, if people do not understand in 2021 that this is an absolute imperative to pay attention to gender and diversity while we are addressing the climate crisis, we are missing it. We are absolutely missing the boat. So we also need really high profile spokespeople who are telling that story. And I think we're starting to have them. That's that.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. And I would like to pick on one particular thing that I think I heard from you, which is that you said that if gone about smartly, there might be a competitive advantage in having a much better understanding of risks associated in not being gender responsive. And this, of course, is transformable into a business advantage, at least with some luck, not in every case, but with some luck. So I think that's something which is good to spread as to all our listeners, that at least where there are disadvantages, if you turn the coin, at least you might get in a different but related field, at least some pluses, on top of the fact that we want to change the disadvantages anyway. Let me come to Vera. As the last one, receiving a question from me in the second round. Now, let me say that you are an established figure in the environmental sustainability field in your country, and actually in Africa as a whole. And I know that you have been recognized as one of the Africa 30 under 30 by Forbes in 2018. Now, from this position out that you have, what is your vision regarding women's leadership for climate neutrality in the next 10 years by 2030? What measures do you think need to be taken until then to get there? And what needs to be done to ensure that women's voices are actually recognized and amplified? And yeah, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say there. And you're muted, I think, or at least I don't hear you. I don't know if everyone doesn't hear you, but I don't. Yeah.
She's not muted.
That sounds a bit like how I feel when I'm in a boardroom. But thank you, Stefan. It's a very good question. And I think I'm going to start by saying two things. The first disclaimer is that when I speak, I want to address that women are not homogenous. So me speaking is really just from my own lived experience as a Black African woman in South Africa. And so I think that maybe even starting there by acknowledging that I've been very fortunate to travel to 10 different African countries just to speak about green buildings. And every country has such a specific culture to it, in terms of even how the women treat the men, or how you'd walk in a boardroom, and how that. So I think it's mindful to acknowledge that. What I would say is that I do think that women have got the potential to lead climate neutrality. In fact, I think the UNEP recently said that in countries where it was led by a female president or a female prime minister, or they had a large percentage of women in parliament, they would start to see a lot of climate policies start to come in play. And I think it's because women, obviously again, a little bit generalized, but women do tend to look at sustainability as economic, environmental, and social sustainability. So when they're looking at solar panels, it's not just put the technology on the rooftop and let's see what happens. It's put the solar panels on the rooftop. Are we able to do good maintenance? Are people able to afford it? How can the entire community get access to it? People start looking at it a lot more holistically when women are involved. So I do think that women-led countries, women-led organizations, they tend to think around sustainability. Men-led organizations do so too, but I think that that really does happen when there's a diversity in the board, because for years, business has been run in a certain way where sustainability was not looked at. And so that means that we can't solve the problem with the same thinking that we used to create it. And that's something that Einstein said, and it's something that I'm going to bring all the way back to this in terms of we need women decision makers in the boardrooms if we're thinking of addressing sustainability. And there is a social risk by not including women. The social risk lies in the fact that 50% of the world's population is women. And so if they're not included in the decision-making process, if they're not included in economically, if they're not included financially, then that means that the women really don't get to move that forward. So I think the ways that we can address this, and it's really high level, is I think that we need to look at it from a top-down approach. And so that means that it does help when there's regulation in place. In South Africa, there's regulation that specifically looks at tax benefits for investing in previously disadvantaged individuals who are women. So that means when it's a woman-owned business, someone ends up getting a 35% tax benefit. And so then they started to invest in women-owned businesses. And so I do think that legislation really does help, and regulations and policies really does help almost to kind of get that catalyst, because you either have a carrot or a stick. And I think that business usually works with one of the two. And so I think it's really just making those enabling environments. Then I think it's bottom up. I think that women on the ground don't necessarily get that opportunity to really influence some of the strategies and policies in place. Now, for instance, I'm talking from a position of privilege as a woman who lives in the urban city in South Africa. What about the women in the rural areas? What about the women who don't have a voice, who don't get a login on a Zoom call and speak to a platform like this? And I think it's being mindful of our own unconscious biases. So for instance, $1.5 billion was invested in VCs in Africa. Less than 5% of that went to African-led VCs. And so, when we speak about, the gender imbalance, there's not only gender inequality, there's also ethnic inequality, there's also racial inequality. And so I think everyone needs to look at the identity marker that has a position of privilege and acknowledge it and say, hey, what bias do I have that is actually not including the voice of another woman who might be from a completely different social, racial, whatever background, and how do I pull her to be at the table? So kind of looking around the table and saying, where are the women? Where are the different kind of women who don't look like me, who are sitting at this particular table? I've noticed that sometimes some of these African-led businesses that get funding from the VCs most of the team isn't even African. And, you know, that happens so much. And I'm just like, but where are, you know, I think it's always constantly thinking around how do we make sure that no one is left behind when it comes to that. And then the last one is just shoulder to shoulder. And so it was top down, bottom up, shoulder to shoulder. And I think that's really some of the greatest lessons I've learned have been from women who were not like me at all. And women who would be like, hey, listen, you know, we know that you do, like, I love how Suzanne spoke about storytelling. Now, best believe, you can imagine, like, my ancestors grew up around the fire storytelling. That's what I know. I just know storytelling. So now when someone asks me about facts, I almost needed, like, I actually had to start putting in people around me who are able to say, here's return on investment. When I had the first person invest in my business, they got a 2,400%, 30 seconds, eh? That a 2,400% return on their investment because I had no idea how to evaluate my company. And now when I'm shoulder to shoulder around other women who are able to say, hey, you know, this is what you can do, or this is what works, this is what doesn't work, or I know a person who, you know, you need to be in that boardroom with, it makes such a difference. So I do think women can lead this. Women already naturally do. I just think it goes back to that thing of opportunities and then fighting all of these systemic unconscious biases. And then still finding that inner resolve to say, you know what, this sucks. I'm muted even though I'm not muted. And I am still going to go fight this and continue to, you know, blaze as much of a trail as possible. So really having that conviction in what all of us are doing within the green space. Now, Stefan, you're muted.
Yes. So thank you. I would like you to stay unmuted actually as well, because I wanted to follow up with a question to you, but then to all of you. But very quick answer, 20 seconds. I'm not even saying 30. And the question is, give them, based on what you say, but based on what all of you said, what is your key advice if women want to be involved, want to make a difference, want to have impact at scale? Your key advice, maximum 3 points. What should they do? We start with you, Vera, then comes Suzanne, then comes Maluisa, and then Chitra. So, Vera.
Really quickly, my key advice would be that you know what you're passionate about. I know that I am passionate about the energy trilemma, and I spoke about energy equity, energy sustainability, and energy security. I'm passionate about that. I think it's not the passion that gets us as women in the industry. It's our resolve. And so what constantly keeps me going is that I constantly think about the woman in the 1950s in South Africa who marched to the parliament and like fought for the right to vote. And I think it's because of them that I am here. And so it means that for the next generation, it's because of me that they'll be there. And so every generation is going to start giving more opportunities to women, which means that it's our resolve to stick where we are and to continue to do the best we can within our particular spheres of influence.
Thank you, Vera. Suzanne.
Yeah, I'm going to echo, know what you're good at, but then also learn. We need people who are multilingual leaders. They need to know about business and development and finance and policy. We need to learn more so that we can be translators in these different environments. That's one. The second is to relentlessly collaborate, as we're hearing demonstrated here about the kinds of collaborations that people are making, and realize that going beyond your silo and learning from somebody who is in an adjacent area can really be a powerful way to bring something back to the arena that you're working on. And then I would say, show up and use your power, use your voice, use your capital, use your networks, use your influence, and the voice of lived experience. Be there to really make that, to really advocate and recognize that we have more power than we do individually, and to really see that women are the key to unlocking the solutions for climate change.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Maluisa.
I'm agree with Vera. We need passion, perseverance, and common benefit. Looking for a common benefit is important. and move on even they say you cannot do. Move. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Chitra.
Okay, like what everybody else said, there are 3 P's which are needed: passion, patience, and perseverance. It's a hard road ahead. A lot of struggle is there. People like me, Vera and Suzanne, we are all very, very privileged that we had all the opportunities in front of us. We got all the support which we needed, both from the family and in the industry. But that not all the women are that lucky. And despite having this kind of a privilege, we struggle. I know I struggle a lot, and I still keep struggling. So instead of becoming disheartened by these things, you need to have the perseverance to say that no matter what, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to succeed here. Women do not want to be celebrated. We need not and should not be celebrated for our gender, but we need support, and we need a level playing field, and we should be respected, recognized, and our concerns should be addressed.
Thank you very much, Chitra. Actually, I would like to thank all of you sincerely for sharing your insights and for your amazing leadership, which came out really extremely well in your contributions to this side event, in ensuring that we all move to a more inclusive and sustainable future. You are role models for not only all the women who are listening in, hopefully, but to all of us, and I include myself here, real role models. And I would like to give all of you a round of applause.
Thank you.
Great work done. Bravo. Now, to close our event, I'm delighted to give the floor to Her Excellency Marcela Guerrero, the Minister for the Status of Women and the Executive President of the National Institute for Women of Costa Rica, who has provided us with the pre-recorded closing remarks. Nicolas, please.
Desde el Instituto Nacional de las Mujeres en Costa Rica y en mi condición de ministra, quiero agradecer a UNIDO, al gobierno de Finlandia, a las personas panelistas que han motivado una serie de acciones concretas para ver qué otras formas de organización económica son posibles. Desde el punto de vista de industrias climáticamente neutrales, desde la economía circular, desde los esfuerzos que tenemos que hacer los países para transicionar a economías verdes. El 2020 fue altamente duro para las mujeres, sobre todo por sus impactos en la pérdida de empleo. Sobre las mujeres recayeron incluso las mayores consecuencias del confinamiento, recrudeciéndose las condiciones de trabajo invisibilizado desde lo doméstico, no pagado, y desde las horas de cuidado que hasta algunas veces se reproducen 3 veces más que el tiempo que dedican los hombres. Las mujeres tienen que estar en el centro de la igualdad. Creo que después del 2020 va a haber un antes y un después en función de pensar no solo en otras formas de organización económica desde esa compatibilidad que tiene que haber con el medio ambiente, sino además desde la igualdad entre hombres y mujeres. Y serán las mujeres sensibles a cuidar el planeta las que liderarán estos esfuerzos. Un abrazo desde Costa Rica.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for closing our event, and to the government of Costa Rica for their continued support towards this important area of work, and also for being one of the leaders of the Feminist Action for Climate Justice Action Coalition under the Generation Equality Forum. We want to thank the government of Finland for co-organizing this event and their continued support towards UNIDO, as well as to gender equality and the empowerment of women. I would also again like to thank the panel for their dedication and for their extremely important well-phrased and passionate contribution to our discussion. And I would like to thank my colleagues Müge and Nicolas, who put all of that together, as well as many other colleagues who worked in the background for preparing this side event. The resounding message is clear. We cannot repair our planet if gender inequalities persist. Women leaders are all around us. It is high time that their leadership in circular economy, climate technologies, and the clean energy transition is recognized and amplified. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye.